right, and welcome to the Courtenay Turner Podcast. I'm your host, Courtenay, and I'm super passionate about moving and thinking. On this show, we are going to dive into all things health, fitness, personal development, lifestyle, and political, sociocultural. I've always been fascinated by people, and I love learning from the experiences and stories of others. This has been a treat for me, and I hope this is enjoyable and useful for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or any way that I can make this a better experience for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hello, welcome to the Courtenay Turner Podcast. I am here today with Shawn Nixon and Johnathan Mathew. They are both personal trainers and nutrition experts, and they are also hosts of the Bridge podcast. How are you guys doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Yeah, feeling good.
Yeah. So I want to hear a little bit, tell us a little bit about what each of you do. I know you're both trainers, but you do yoga, you do more traditional style personal trainer. Tell us a little bit about each of your backgrounds, and then tell me why you started the Bridge podcast.
Well, that's a big one.
Yeah.
So that'll
Yeah.
lead us into everything. So I just felt I'm just in love with science and the human body and the human experience in general. So I quit working construction for like 10 years to become a personal trainer.
Okay.
And I quickly realized that physical stuff is just a surface layer, and there's mental, emotional, and spiritual healing and wellness to do with the human experience. So I was extremely successful by taking a holistic approach to healing people and helping people. And then, like I said, so now, I'm just a personal trainer, and that still has some clients after getting wiped out by the government because people are afraid of germs because the TV told them to hide inside and never told them how to optimize their immune system. But because of that, and you'll see when we tell the story, we started the podcast so we could reach more people. We didn't even have Instagram before this. So that's why we're just so grateful to connect with people like you. Yeah, we're only 6-8 months into Instagram and podcasting and everything. Yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
that's awesome.
Well, I have to say, your podcast, your meme game is amazing.
So the people got
you got up really quickly.
To me, it's like it's my little version of like stand-up comedy that I used to be
Yeah.
like a class clown and then like the life of the party type of guy. But also I'm using the same magic that they do on the news in reverse. On TV, they try to control everybody's brains with just fear and lies, and then they cut the commercial and try to sell you something. So I'll just put like joke to get you to laugh and relax, and then slip in like a red pill, like think about this type of thing, and hit you with some truth and some facts.
Yeah.
While you're in a relaxed laughing state versus a fearful control state.
I love
So
it.
I just use their same magic against this, because when you know everything is energy, and that's the whole game of everything is just vibration and energy exchange.
Yeah.
They want us to be, whatever the powers that be, want us to be in fear. So that's how you make bad decisions and control a population. So the only way to rise above that is to laugh and love yourself and love your neighbor.
So true. I love it. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your story, Johnathan.
Yeah, so what I do a bunch of different things right now. So I'm a yoga instructor, still do some strength conditioning coaching, a nutritionist. I also do graphic design. I'm a writer as well too, and so I'm also launching a publication
Awesome.
as well. So yeah.
What do you
my
love
story-
writing?
I write mostly about and my publication includes writing from different people, for different contributors about really health, wellness, spirituality, philosophy, communication, just humanity in general. Just speaking to the human experience and the nature of interconnection of the human experience. So that's conscious content with the publication. But yeah, my story, I actually became a nutrition major because I was trained to become a fighter, which is not something most people think when they look at me, but I was back in the day. I started actually as an architecture major, and then I switched to nutrition once I realized like that wasn't for me, and I wanted to work on pursuing this goal. The dream of becoming a fighter went to the wayside, but I retained the health, the wellness, the nutrition part of it. And then maybe like 6 years ago, kind of sparked my spiritual awakening journey when I moved to California, which is where you are, right, from college. So up to the Bay Area. And,
Okay. I'm south. I'm in Santa Monica.
Okay, you're south.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So ever since then, I've just been on the path of just learning more advancing more spiritually, expanding my awareness, connecting with like-minded people, finding your soul fam, as we like to say here. So the people that you are, karmically tied to in this lifetime, and finding those connections is really, really powerful. So social media, I was off social media for 7 years.
Wow.
2014, I just made Instagram in March this past year. So it's just like jumping back into the game. So it's been really cool to connect with so many people, because I was kind of not anti-social media, but it was a distraction for me. That's why I got rid of it. But now it's a great way to connect with, like I said, like-minded people and expanding my awareness.
I was against it. I thought it was all dudes on steroids with Photoshop and girls with plastic surgery and filters, like all nonsense.
Still a lot of that.
Yeah, but I thought it was all negative. And I didn't realize, right now, I don't follow any models and I don't follow any food, right? So I didn't realize how many cool people there was out there. Because other than John, there was nobody around me that like understands me, as far as like everybody always trying to put people in a box of like, oh, like Shawn played college football, so he's like a dumb meathead. Right. That can't understand like yoga and spirituality, and like I read more books than you. Like, what are you even talking about right now? Like, and it's confusing. So I just ignored everybody and did my own thing, right? But then getting on Instagram, it's like, whoa, there's so many like-minded people that are awesome, and now there's like a collective adversity that we're all going through, and that's always something that brings people together.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting because so we're all in California, and it's very interesting because in some ways there's more of the resistance here because there needs to be. So some of the, the more like awake, like-minded and patriotic people are actually here, even though you wouldn't think that.
I know, I wouldn't think that either. But I think
it's because they're up against such opposition that they need to be. And so they're even stronger in their convictions, because otherwise they're completely swallowed. So
yeah, it feels like the extremes breed more tension with each polarity breeds polarity, right? So it's they're creating that essentially, right? So
right. So tell me about, I feel like our journeys have been a little bit there's synchronicity there in terms of when we started our podcast and the why behind it. So tell me a little bit about that story and journey.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to hear your why, but we were talking off air about like just starting in 2020 in the middle of like whatever you want to call it, shit, COVID times, you know what I mean?
COVID times, yeah.
Yeah, because when people say pandemic, I'm like, oh boy, the fluoride's really working on you, because you don't understand what that word even means. Right. But I knew I'm really sensitive to energies and stuff, and I got really good intuition, and I knew immediately in like, I forget if it was January or February, I remember exactly where I was. It popped up on the screen because the gym we used to work at, that I still work at, is CNN on every single channel. And now everybody's wearing 2 masks and gloves and whatever. So you get the picture, right? Yeah. So I remember back, let's call it February 2020, they showed that first case showed up in Washington State in America or something like that, because they were already previewing it in China, and I kept like an ear on it. I was like, oh shit. And I had a feeling that I kind of ignored. And I remember like freezing and looking up at the TV being like, oh, this is not going to be fucking good. And then March 15th of 2020 was when we got shut down. And everybody was like, oh, yay, this is great. We'll stay home and collect unemployment. It'll be 2 weeks off. I'm like, you morons do not see what's happening right now. Like, first of all, we don't even know yet if this is as real as they're saying. And second of all, sitting home and collecting unemployment and shutting down schools and businesses is never the right thing to do. And this was all before, like, when it could have been something bad for sure. Because when we didn't know, I just had a feeling. Because everybody gets a pass for the first couple months. But by June 2020, like, the information was out. And by the summer, we should have been back to normal, and people should have woken up by then to the hoax. But anyway, they shut down our gym. I lose everything because not only money, because money is whatever. I'm making so much less money now, and I'm so much happier. So that doesn't matter. But that was my livelihood, was coming in every single day. I would spend 12 hours in the gym just hanging out with people, helping people, training so many people in a row, helping people for free, just working out, hanging out, all in this one spot. And now everybody's afraid of germs and they're hiding at home. And everybody's okay with, oh, 2 more weeks unemployment, 2 more weeks, 2 more weeks. And I fell into a deep depression that I hadn't felt, that I thought I conquered for years and years ago. And I, just because they ripped away my livelihood and the thing I love to do every single day, I was ready to throw a toaster in the bathtub, and I was really sad about it. And John called me up and he was like, yo, this is a good thing. I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, that's when you know you got a real. He goes, no. I'm like, this is horrible. This is this is that. It's bullshit. People don't see they're being lied to, and I'm losing my mind. And he goes, yeah. He's like, you're not wrong, but you guys see, this is a good thing. He goes, we're going to start a fucking podcast, and it's going to be amazing because it's going to blow up, and you're going to be able to help so many more people than the 10 or 12 people that you were helping in person each day. And I was like, holy shit, because you always used to mention it.
Well, so we used to work together in the same gym, and then I left, maybe like a year after.
Yeah, and I used to teach classes. So it'd be like 20 trainers, and I would teach them whatever, how to coach, how to be a trainer, or whatever, and do like little seminars and little workshops like twice a week. And every time I would say something crazy or funny or inappropriate or like mind-blowing, he would always be like, dude, we need to start a podcast.
Yeah, people would tell us all the time at the gym, like, you guys
are hilarious and smart. What the fuck are you doing? And I was making so much money and I was so busy. Like I said, I didn't have Instagram. I didn't have a moment of time. So I just like, didn't even think of it. But he always used to mention it. And then he was like, no, now we're doing it because guess what? Now you have the time.
Well, you've all listened to him and met him before. And so I remember getting the text, and like, I could tell from the tone, like, Shawn never sounds, like, rarely, almost ever sounds depressed. Even when he is depressed, he's usually good at not being depressed. I remember those texts. I'm like, oh shit, he's feeling it. I remember exactly where I was when I got those. I'm like, I was lucky enough to keep my job. And I lost some clients and lost some things like that, like everybody did. But I was able to keep some sort of steady-ish job throughout this, which I'm blessed for. But I remember thinking, like, well, fuck it. Like, because I knew that job wasn't where I wanted to be long-term. And I was like, well, this is like opportunity striking right now. Like, this is, when the pressure comes in, is like when that diamond is made, right? When that coal becomes a diamond. You're never really forced onto the avenue that you're meant to be on until you're forced onto that path, right? Because you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done this if you weren't forced to do it. Right?
So only good things happen. When you zoom out in the long term, there's suffering and there's horrible shit. When you go 3 months forward, 3 years forward, 30 years forward, that was always something good. It always was exactly what you needed, and everything works out perfectly in the universe. And when you're in the middle of trauma and stress and disaster, you don't know that. But I have never been happier in my life with the people like yourself that I've been able to connect with, and just doing this for fun. Like, even if nobody ever listened, this is so much fun talking all the knowledge that we've accumulated and learned in our experiences, and just cracking jokes and stuff. And then on top of that, the feedback from people that actually like it and laugh and are entertained. I've never felt better in my life. So the way everything works is like equal and opposite reaction. We talked about everything being energy. So as shitty as 2020 is and 2021 and probably into the near future as well, there's going to be equal and opposite great times coming, because everything in the universe is cyclical. So we're entering a golden age, and we just got to pay up front in suffering and nonsense to get to the good times.
Yeah, and even if you just look at like the patterns throughout history, right? You had World War I, then you had your Roaring '20s, and then you had the Great Depression, World War II, then you had the Industrial Revolution, stock market crisis, gigantic tech boom. It's all coming in cycles. So, but like you said, when you're in the middle of it, there's no hindsight or foresight. You're just forced to be with the shittiness of the suffering of the moment, right? But if you can just pause, detach for a minute, and just have some perspective, and sometimes you need a homie to help you out with that perspective. Like, he's helped me tons of times before. Then you can start to see, well, I know what, I think it was Avi Marcus posted a really good thing, like hindsight, let your hindsight become your foresight, right? So that's really what, if you can pause with that and just ride out and trust your intuition with it, then you'll be on the right path. You won't let fear dictate your decisions, right? You'll let your intuition dictate your decisions and just find that peace through the chaos.
Yeah, I love that, because I'm big on like pattern recognition. So once you recognize patterns in history, in your own life, and then zoom out and see within civilization, hindsight becomes your foresight, because you know the same shit's going to happen. So you're just looking at the cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. The pattern recognition. So funny. I was, and I didn't realize this till it was actually early, I think it was early 2020, actually. I had, or maybe it was in 2019, but I was visiting my mom and I was, pointing something out. It's like a sign. And she's like, how did you put that together? And I was like, oh, because, pattern recognition is my thing. And I remembered it because this is really funny. But when I was 2 years old, I had a tutor and she said that she had never seen, somebody who is such a master of pattern recognition. Like that was one of my strengths. And I remember asking my mom, I was like, why did I have, so I don't know how much you know about my story, but I was born with a lot of physical challenges. And so I thought I had a tutor because, I was remedial and needed, what 2-year-old has a tutor, And my mom was like, no, and I remember her, Mrs. Corey. I remember she was like 104 years old, literally. And I think she was 100 when I started, 102 when I started working with her. She was awesome. But she was, old. She was a century old. And I was like, yeah, so did Mrs. Corey work with special ed children? And my mom said, no, she only worked with gifted children. And I had no idea. My whole life, like decades, I thought, I had this tutor because I was like remedial and needed special ed. And she's like, no, she only worked with gifted kids. And apparently that was like one of the things that I was able to recognize pattern. But it's so hard to recognize in your own life. I think all of us have, the ability to recognize pattern. All of us have intuition. But when things get really close to us, we're not as keen. And I don't think it's that we don't have the ability. I think it's that we push it off because it's hard to take a cold, hard look, and it gets emotional, right? It stirs a lot of things up. So yeah, so you were asking, you were curious about my story, and it's pretty similar. So I had kind of a few years before the lockdown started, the COVID era, if you will. But I had kind of been transitioning. I was an actress producer and I had moved into a world of, I created a show. It's called WIM, What is Movement? I believe that all human beings are designed to move. The ways in which we do are our unique creative expression. And I was exploring ways that people can heal through, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually through movement, because I very much, like both of you, realize that I have a huge passion for athletics and physical training, but it was never about, just the sport or just the physical movement. I always realized that, anybody, and this is what I love about athletes, is it doesn't matter how talented you are. You could be the most gifted person in the world. You are never going to the Olympics by sitting on the couch, like you're not going to get there. Maybe for, a little bit of time while you visualize, because I think that's actually really important, but you have to put the work in, and athletes understand that. They know that what you put in is what you get out. And yes, if you have a gift, if you have a talent, you may get a little further than somebody else, who puts the same work in, but you still have to do the work. And so there's a humility in that. And I so respect that. And I so appreciate it. And I love watching, as a coach, when I would work with people, I loved watching their journey, where, especially when you take, novice people who first walk in, like, I use the example of like a push-up, like somebody who's never done a push-up, it seems impossible.
Yes.
They're like, I'm never going to be able to do that. And then when you start working through the progressions with them, they feel so empowered. It's this sense of accomplishment. And it's not about the push-up. It's not about the fact that they can start to see their biceps. Those are added perks, like they may look better and they feel better, but it's proving to themselves that they're capable of so much more than they ever thought they were. So I started this show and I got into motivational speaking, sharing my own personal journey, with all, being born with congenital rubella. And, they told my mom the best they could hope was find a nice institution for me to spend my life, and that I would never walk, talk, do anything. And
Silly doctors.
Right. Ye of little faith. And clearly that was not the case. Fortunately, my mom didn't buy it either, and was very persistent. And I had a pretty persistent personality as well. So we really fought to overcome. And I would do that, and I would do aerial acrobatics. when I gave my speeches, not at the same time, I would do the acrobatic.
That would be awesome if you did, though.
That would be really awesome. Maybe one day. And I was also coaching at a CrossFit gym. All this to say, the lockdowns hit, and I can't. So obviously, there was no place that I could publicly speak because speaking gigs were not a thing. I couldn't do the aerial because the venues were not open. And both of the gyms that I was working at fired me, and I can't prove this, but when you put coincidences together, I'm pretty sure it was because of politics. So when the lockdowns first started, because I've been in the entertainment industry, because I live in Santa Monica, and because even the fitness industry here was just, a lot of people were not very aligned with my views. I was very involved in like the circus world and, aerial acrobatics. And so, not to say that there aren't any like-minded people, but a lot of people really weren't. And I just really started to be quiet for, many, many years. And when the lockdowns happened, I was so isolated, so depressed. I just felt completely demoralized. I was not in a good place. And I remember I tell the story. I sat down, I thought this is a great time to write. I have all this time. I sat in front of my computer, and I'm very empathic. So I could feel just like that anxiety of the world, it was like a collective depression. And I literally stared at a screen for 10 hours, and I had nothing to show for the end of my day. And I know the creative process very well. And I was like, I can't force this. So I ordered a bunch of books. I was like, I'm going to start reading. And then I started reading, and then I had nobody to talk to about all this great stuff that I was reading. And I love my mom dearly, and she really humored me and letting me chew her ear off about like each book I read. But, I think I needed another outlet. And I started voicing some opinions on Facebook because it was a matter of integrity. I felt like, part of the problem is autocritique. The censorship becomes so strong that people start to silence themselves. And I never, for me, that's a loss of integrity because I don't want to be part of the problem. I can't complain about being canceled if I'm canceling myself. So I started to speak out, and I lost a lot of friends, both, virtual friends and real life friends, which is sad. But I also gained new ones. And I felt that, if people aren't going to take me for who I am, and for what I have to say, you don't have to agree with me. Like, I understand I can be controversial. You absolutely don't have to agree with me, but to disrespect me and to cut me off because you don't like what I have to say that's antithetical to everything this country stands for, and it's antithetical to everything that I stand for. So yeah, so a bunch of people suggested doing this podcast thing, and I thought, wow, I'd be forced to have conversations with people, which is what I'm craving so desperately. And so here we are.
It's perfect. See, everything works out perfectly. And the whole time I was feeling so much empathy before you even got to that part of the story, which is funny. Because I'm the same way. I'm super empathetic and sensitive to energies. And I was remembering that collective suffering and that collective depression, which is still going on, but it was so much worse. And now because we're connecting with like-minded people, it's getting so much better. And it was funny because you got to that part of the story. I was like, yep, my feeling was right about 1 minute before she said it.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
The other thing that I remember is liquor stores were deemed essential. And I live in Santa Monica, and everything was like shut down. Everywhere you went, you had to wear masks. And, the masks are a huge problem for me personally. I think they're problematic for everybody, to be really honest. That's my view. But they're really problematic for me because I'm blind in one eye. And so I don't get, depth perception, most parallax, and I have 60% of the peripheral vision that people who have bilateral vision have, So when you put on the mask, the light's reflecting off the mask, and it limits your periphery. And there have been studies shown on this. It limits everybody's periphery, but it further reduces mine, which is already impaired. So, I'm not going to do, physical things that require physical exertion. I'm certainly not going to climb, 20, 30 feet in the air and hang upside down, when my vision is further limited. So I just was really, and I can't read lips when I'm hearing impaired as well. So when other people have the mask, I get very frustrated because I can't read their lips. And people just, I realize, and I understand it's really hard to expect other people to, be in my shoes and understand, but they get so frustrated because they can see that I can hear something. And I'm like, yeah, I have my hearing aids and I can hear that you're speaking, but I don't have the clarity because I can't see your lips. I learned how to speak by reading lips. And so I think all human beings were designed to see full facial recognition. We perceive communication, a lot of it is nonverbal. But with somebody who's hearing impaired, it's that much greater. And so anyway, all this to say, I started, going down to my liquor store like literally every day because he respected my mask exemption and they were open and he would talk to me, the owner. Really sweet man. He's never there anymore, but he would talk to me, every time I walked in. And I'm not a huge drinker. I mean, like, I'm not, it's not like I never drink, but I like red wine. So I buy, bottles of red wine. I would go through a bottle a week, which I know for some people doesn't sound like a tremendous amount, but for me, it was a lot more than I was used to drinking. And I remember I got to like about 4 weeks in, and I actually really enjoyed the taste of red wine. And I got about 4 weeks in, I would have my, half glass, whatever, a night. And I didn't enjoy the taste of it. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I realized it was because it was a place to go. It was someone to talk to. I could see his face. I didn't have to wear my mask. Like that human interaction, trumped the, whatever detriments I was causing myself by drinking something I wasn't even really enjoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe that they would just take away human connection like that and think that that's going to help people's livelihoods or health or wellness and our immune system.
And I think a part of that too is just like is being so consumed in the moment, not being able to see or even not even anticipate, but have the foresight to see like what are the long-term effects of that? How is that changing perception? Because all studies on psychology or connection, and it's all looking at the past of stuff, seeing longitudinal studies or seeing things that already happened. So if you're going through something in the moment, like of course you're not gonna, it's easy to overlook that, but then you're missing out on the potential for what that's doing, especially for kids who are developing these kind of skills that they need to develop very, very early. Especially, and just not even, the facial thing is one thing, but just also the social interaction is massive, right? And like kids are already socially disconnected before the pandemic because of technology and the way consumerism is and how that works. So
the fact that kids are still wearing masks is child abuse. And I want to just say right now that the doctors, the teachers, and all these people that are allowing this should be a part of the Nuremberg trials, along with the media and all this, because it's straight up child abuse. There's no studies that show masks work. There's no studies that show kids are dying from COVID, and let alone the Fauci emails that proved all this that we can get to if you'd like.
Yeah.
But all this is out and kids are still wearing masks.
Right.
That is out of control to me. Somebody needs to be held accountable for that, because I've been a victim of child abuse and I've seen it and it's absolutely disgusting, but now it's an entire generation and that's absolutely out of control. Children are not dying from COVID. They're not spreading COVID, and cloth masks do absolutely nothing. For the people that haven't done the extensive research that I have, all masks are useless except for an N95 mask if it's professionally fitted and it's fits snug and you don't take it off. Germs are all around us. They're microscopic. As soon as you take it off, or if you have a cloth mask where any air gets in, you're no longer blocking any virus whatsoever. You're better off optimizing your immune system. And this is for adults. For children, they should never be wearing a mask. How can you explain to me, just with logic, if you haven't done the scientific research that I have, that a child can walk into a restaurant, sit down and take off their mask, but they can't sit down in school and take off their mask? How can someone explain that to me?
COVID has a GPS, don't you know? It's a really smart virus. So it knows, like, when you get to your chair and you sit down, it's like, oh, now we're no longer contagious.
On timeout. I got it. So it's only in the schools and gyms.
Yeah,
it's not in the restaurants or political buildings.
Well, let's go back to the fact that liquor stores are essential, for one.
Yeah, when
right.
Yeah, they try to say it's about health, and fast food and liquor is open and gyms and health stores are closed.
Yeah, and I want to address the N95 mask, but even the N95 masks, they have shown that the particles are so small. You know, they're much better, but they still get through that.
Yep.
And the mask, and they do more harm than they do. And I think the thing that people don't understand is that when they talk about medical professionals and how they wear the masks when they do surgery or, you know, many procedures, they wear it to prevent bacterial infection to open wounds of people they're treating.
Yes. Very
They don't do it to prevent from catching a flu or And while we're on that, then this is another rabbit hole. I'm curious how you guys feel about this one, since I think both of you are pretty well researched. So have you seen this? There's a group of people who believe viruses don't exist at all.
Oh, well, there's people that think birds don't exist and the earth is flat too. And I think people like that say things like that to muddy the waters for the conspiracies that are true.
Yes.
And it throws off the cause of
this is how controlled opposition actually works, right?
That is literally controlled opposition. Because I can prove Pearl Harbor, Gulf of Tonkin, 9/11, COVID, JFK. I can prove these things.
Yeah.
But like I said, flat earth and all birds are military drones and viruses.
Wait, I haven't even heard that one.
Oh, that's a good one. For all birds are fake.
Wow.
Dinosaurs didn't exist is another one. Like, to me, my discernment is so good and my research is so deep that I can tell which ones are controlled opposition and which ones are 100% true. And then there's some where I'm like, jury's out on that one.
Yeah, there are
but
some.
I discern between all that, like fact, theory, opinion. Those are all different things. And we can't just go shouting out things that aren't true. But here's the thing. So the reason why that's controlled opposition is so that they can play the germ theory, terrain theory game of, oh my God, we have to kill every germ in the world. Like, first of all bacteria and all viruses are not bad. And they are real, by the way, Courtney. So I don't know who told you that.
Oh, there is a big group of people who don't believe they're real. Yeah.
Well, you can't, like, not even just COVID, but all viruses.
Yeah. So, and I think what has happened is that there is, I think because of the lie of COVID, which is now coming to the surface. So this is not, this is no longer theory. This is being proven. And we're now allowed to talk about it, I think, on certain platforms, at least. But
well, I don't care what I'm allowed to talk about because I
I know. But the fact that the powers that be have designated that we are now allowed to say that there is a possibility that it has escaped from a Wuhan lab. Yeah. So for those of you who are listening, you can see the fingers up that Shawn doesn't really care. He's basically saying F you.
Yeah, birds are real, man.
Those birds are real. Those birds are real.
So, but just because of the lie of COVID, I think it has given a mouthpiece to some of these people who have said that viruses don't exist at all, that they're just exosomes is the theory that I'm hearing. And now exosome, even if you subscribe to that, still falls into germ theory because, so both
at the end of the day, all you can do is optimize your immune system. And all you can do is take personal responsibility for your health, whether COVID's real or whether it's not, whether you get an injection or whether it's not, or whether viruses are real or not. It's your personal responsibility and no one else's to take care of your health and happiness. Exactly. That's it. So all these other theories and conspiracies don't even matter.
No, they really don't.
Government is not your mommy and they're not your daddy, and neither are doctors. You have to take personal responsibility for your own health.
Yeah, I think too, like you said, especially because we're in the health, there's the medical field often gets the moniker of that's what health is, but we would disagree, right? And say that like medicines for when you are already sick is too far late. There's something else you can do. That's your last line of defense, right?
Right.
Everything before that's what you do for yourself.
It's acute treatment.
Exactly, right? And I think what I know bothers you and definitely bothers me is that even if COVID was this crazy deadly super virus, or even if it's not anything at all, or if it's an exosome, whatever, you have zero control over that, right? So why are you worrying about something you have no control over, arguing about what you have no control over? But there was never anything pushing you do have control over your own health, because there's real science. Like before COVID, before any conspiracy, if you call it a conspiracy or not, that proves you can change your health. Like you can reverse disease. with lifestyle, diet, health, exercise, we're all fitness professionals here. We all know that, and we've all seen it with clients and done it before. But there's still just that stigma. We did an episode with primary health versus alternative health. And we're trying to switch that around, right? So like alternative should be when I can't fix it myself, then I go get a surgery, get whatever needs to be done. But I'm going to go see if I can do it first. Because why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Primary care is you taking care of yourself with diet and lifestyle and movement and stress reduction and stuff.
Right.
What I kept flipping out for people that are not awake and aware of the situation, I would try to explain to them, because I've tried so many different tactics of trying to like wake people up, and now I think it's too late because it's so obvious that the cognitive dissonance has just set in so much that there's no more waking up anybody. But at first I would be like, you do realize any single news channel, it doesn't cost them anything to, when they said stay 6 feet apart, wear a mask, wash your hands, on the same television screen, they could have said, get some exercise, take vitamin D, and limit junk foods. They could have said those things and it would have saved so many lives, let alone the hydroxychloroquine lie, let alone the mask lie, let alone the other lies. They could have said vitamin D can help, zinc can help, vitamin C can help, exercise can help, and it costs you nothing. It's very cheap. They didn't say that. So how is that not a red flag that they don't give a shit about your health whatsoever? Like they could have said both. Like I know that distancing is bullshit and I know the masks are bullshit, but some people believe that. So if whatever you believe is your reality, and that's fine, and I'll respect that. But I also know for a fact, if your vitamin D levels are low, your immune system is not optimized. So like, how come that was never on any channel ever?
And who can argue against that? Like who can argue against exercise, nutrition, health, supplementation, vitamin D?
So they could have showed both, and then it would have been like, oh shit, maybe they do care about our health and they're just doing everything they can over and above. But they tipped their hand and they gave away their bullshit when they never once cared about health at all. They only pushed a narrative.
Yeah.
Because imagine if that, what would that do, right? If I realized, there's something I can actually do to change my health.
That's empowering. That's
empowering.
A good thing.
Empowering.
Yes. So, and I like how you put it in terms of like primary health and primary care is personal responsibility, personal accountability. I think one of the things that and this is pervasive throughout all realms of, certainly we saw it in health. And I actually thought it was very interesting that I think a lot of health, whether it be, in the fitness space or in the wellness space or in the medical space, really did wake up through 2020 because of the lies that were being spewed and because of the lack of attention on simple things that people can do to take care of themselves. But I'm curious about your thoughts about how it seems as if they want to take away any personal empowerment. It's all about averting everything to authorities when there's not a blanket treatment for everybody. It's kind of like where they're pushing the mask first and foremost. That was the first line of defense, which is not going to be a strategy for everybody. I've told you my personal challenges with it. There are people with asthma. There are people with claustrophobia. There's people with, severe kinds of complications. Then they can't wear a mask. So that obviously to say everybody should do this is already false. Now they're saying everybody should go and get an injection, which even if this thing were actually an inoculation and there were great science behind it, that aside, let's say this actually were, a truly miraculous, benevolent treatment. It's not going to be for everybody. So what happened to people, taking some personal responsibility and looking at them and looking at people as individuals?
That is the second time that they tipped their hand, because they kept saying 100% of people need to get injected, when that's not how this works at all. It should be for who needs it and who's done the research and who qualifies, because every single experiment has a variable and a control. So if you inject 100% of the population, you now no longer have a control, and now it's not science whatsoever. So that's another place where I hear that and alarms go off in my head. I'm like, that's a red flag. That's bullshit.
Right.
Like you cannot say that 100% of people need to get it. That's crazy to me.
It is.
Yeah, I think, again, I think there's no way to have a longitudinal study with something that's this short, right? So whenever that happens and whatever the information is, I'm for most things, I'm pro-choice with that, you know, like, and if it does work, then why would a pro-choice thing not make sense to begin with, right? If you're fully vaccinated and you're entirely immune, then why should you not be able to be around an unvaccinated person?
That's a whole bunch of
that's not even science or politics. That's just like a logic, rational,
sense and logic.
Just like logic breakdown. We'll go step by step, and it doesn't make any sense.
So,
right?
Ready for good news though? That's kind of breaking news, but maybe you saw it.
Breaking news.
And we're breaking the news. I should look it up so I get the wording right and cite the proper study. But my man Rand Paul just broke a study that somewhere in Ohio or Ohio University or something like that, a large enough study, I think hundreds of thousands of people. There's no difference between injected people.
Yes, I saw that this morning.
Had COVID as far as the antibodies. So what does that tell you? That means their passport, their new world order, and their whole great reset is out the fucking window, because you cannot ask me for a passport when I have antibodies, when the science shows same. So that pulls the plug on that dream. And I don't know who, Jesus or Buddha or Moses, gave us fucking Rand Paul, but he seems like the only one working on the inside, where it's the rest of us, health and truthers and holistic health people, screaming from the outside. And Rand Paul seems like the only one doing work on the inside. Yeah,
he definitely, he didn't really, for those of us who were hoping that he might vote against the, on the 6th, he wasn't really there. But in terms of the medical stuff, he has really been in this fight, especially against Fauci and exposing the truths. And
some people would say that he had to let the 6th go through as it was so that they could actually be caught red-handed. And I'm sure you've read those.
I have. I've this is where it becomes, it's theory, right? Because that I'm not privy to the inside of that.
We can't prove that, which is interesting, because to me, on so many levels of politics, there's plenty of red-handed evidence. Like, how can you explain to me it's been 5 days and Fauci hasn't been arrested? How can anybody explain that? Because if I had emails that look like that, I'd be in handcuffs awaiting trial within an FBI investigation.
Yeah.
Worldwide. Like, what the hell? Like, he's not even suspended from work. He's still showing up in Congress and giving advice on TV.
Which is
like, how is he not in handcuffs and then he's, whatever, innocent until proven guilty, like the investigation goes on.
Right. But
like,
he should at least be brought up on some sort of charges, right? Investigation.
Just look into it. Because that's great. Like, if they found emails like that for me, I'd be in handcuffs immediately. And then the same people that say that people of color get pulled over just by looking a certain way and getting shot left and right are not standing up and saying that this smells fishy at all. Like, they're using this police thing both ways. Like, it's just crazy to me. It's just such blatant corruption and so many people don't see it. And moving on real quick so I don't go too crazy on that Keebler elf Fauci that he is, because he's just a pawn. And
I agree.
They tried to
the SARS pandemic book said that. They said that the front man will take the fall. Yeah.
But so what was crazy to me is he was clearly the front man the whole time. He's clearly got enough dirt on him where he could be the pawn. They put the pawn out there to get captured, and then nobody even knocked him off the board. He's still out there. Like, I thought they'd get him. Then you do a big enough investigation where it's crimes against humanity, high treason to the United States of America, you give him the death penalty, or he's got to tell on everybody, Gates and whomever else, you know what I mean? Right. But they never even arrested you. They put the pawn out in the middle of the board and nobody knocked him off the board. That's so crazy to me that you didn't even take that down. What else was I gonna say? Forget Fauci. And then all this comes out and kids are still wearing masks.
Yeah.
Like, still. That's absolutely crazy to me.
Yeah. It is crazy, and it's really tragic. What do you think? And I know this is, I will preface that this would just be speculation, but what do you think will happen? Like, do you think that Fauci will take a fall? What do you think their next end game is, or the next plan they'll implement is? Where do you think we're going from here?
Oh, well, I could give you crazy theories there. as far as positivity, I am assuming that Rand Paul is one of the good guys. It really seems like he's putting enough information out there where he could at least block the passport. Because as long as you don't force children to get it, and as long as you don't force a passport, I really don't give a shit what people inject into their body. Because there's where I'm with you, where it's pro-choice, pro-freedom of do whatever the hell you want. Just don't hurt anybody else, don't hurt the environment, and don't hurt any animals. So, and part of us as adults should be protecting the children, no? Other than that, people can do whatever they want.
I would normally say that, and I absolutely I agree with you in terms of the passports. I absolutely agree in like free choice. And the analogy that I use is we ingest poisons all the time. I mean, not everybody, but actually everybody, because there's stuff in the air, it's in the, and we take risks all the time. And a great example is, I was talking earlier about alcohol. We know it's a toxin. We have plenty of evidence. It is a toxin. Many of us choose to ingest that toxin. We adjudicate the risk versus the reward. We know that, if we're going to a party, we're going, whatever it is, and we're willing to pay the consequences, that we may not feel as well the next day. We may not be as productive, whatever it may be, where we're paying a price and we're willing to pay that price. But we know what those risks are. We know that we're ingesting poison. My concern with this is, and we have the freedom to do so. And I strongly believe in allowing people to have that freedom. The problem lies in this case, for me, is one, we don't have full information because of the, opacity of information due to the short time period. And we are currently in the clinical trial. And two, because of the suppression of information. So that's first, we don't really have full informed consent to be able to adjudicate the risk versus rewards. Secondly, is I do think there are complications for other people. Now, of course, this is all speculative, but I know before we got on, and I know this is not going to be popular to discuss, but I have experienced firsthand some of this. I have not been injected. I was tested showed up having spike proteins. I've had the symptoms that, a lot of people are discussing on social media. Now, of course, again, this is all theoretical. We don't know exactly, but it seemed very likely. We can say the correlation is pretty high. I am around lots of people who have been, and I am paying a price. And I hope that, I will be able to take some personal responsibility for my health, and take, measures that will boost my immunity and be able to detox from, this poison. And, hopefully I will be just fine. But that's where to put children under that, and they're as a result of their parents or their teachers, or that to me that's where we do get into, you had mentioned Nuremberg, and I do feel like it is crimes against humanity. So
it is. And that's where we agree, even though you said it differently, meaning you said there's not enough information. It's still a trial until 2023. There's censorship, whatever. To me, that's enough information to not take. Like, oh, you guys have showed me all you need to know. Since when, Courtney, Big Pharma made $1.25 trillion last year? Since when did they become a charity overnight where they're not for profit? They're giving out the cure for free.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a whole nother layer that we haven't gotten to, is who's making money off of this, and the layers of.
And maybe it's more than money is going on here,
Right.
It's
right. Well, most of the masses have seen a decrease in their incomes and in their accumulated wealth. The value of the dollar has already decreased. We're seeing inflation. There are many who, or a select few, shall we say, who have seen their fortunes exponentially increase.
So many coincidences recently, huh?
Yeah.
The coincidences are adding up. The rich get richer? That's got to be new too. We were talking about pattern recognition before. Crisis, the rich get richer, and then here's a free solution to the cure. But give us all your freedoms now, and then we'll give them back in 2 weeks. Don't worry about it, guys. Nothing's free.
Does anyone remember that 2 weeks to flatten the curve?
Yo, and nobody cares. How is any history teacher or any science teacher not saying something about this? If I'm a kid and you're trying to teach me biology or chemistry, how am I to listen to any fucking word you're saying when you're wearing a mask when I can look up in 2 minutes on Google that masks are bullshit? So how am I going to trust anything else that you're saying right now? Like, that's crazy to me. Like, they're ruining children's lives, let alone the people that have already lost their business, committed suicide, all these things. And anybody that's going to chime in and be like, oh, you're dismissing the people that actually died from COVID. No, not at all. It's sad when anyone dies, but there's so much needless suffering going on right now that they're adding to it. You can't make the cure worse than, you can't make the solution worse than the problem. That's crazy to me. And then when you look at only 5% of people actually died that they said that did, like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, that's crazy. It's a 99.97% survival rate. And you think you want to wear a mask and inject poison? That's the solution? Do people because then you're getting into just such a deep cognitive dissonance and a trance of fear over and over again that people are just not thinking correctly. And I like how you put a positive spin on it before, where you said it woke up so many medical professionals and stuff. Yeah. What about all the ones that don't? Because we live in Princeton, New Jersey, and there's doctors that tell me you can't do anything about, you can't change your vitamin D levels, supplementation's bullshit. You can't lower your heart rate. You can't change type 2 diabetes. You can't lower your blood pressure. And they're just every doctor I've talked to, and they're fat and out of shape, and they're just older guys that make a lot of money, and they graduated in 1980, and they're just not learning any new shit. And they're wearing 2 masks in the car and walking outside.
These are medical professionals?
Medical professionals. Injection, double mask in the car. And they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year saying that I'm stupid and they need to live in fear from COVID because it's killing everyone.
We have countless studies that have shown that people can change their biomarker through exercise, nutrition, stress management, socialization, which they wanted to take away. That's actually a huge immune booster and has tremendous benefits for like very tangible biomarkers, things like blood pressure, things like your resting heart rate, things like so many health benefits that are actually trackable, measurable.
Just brainwashed, indoctrinated and brainwashed so much.
Your patterns if you graduated, right? Like how many doctors, it's also an issue with the healthcare system, like how many doctors seem to double booking patients a day, getting reps from pharmaceutical companies, are actually spending the time to look up the new research, the new studies, and being open to an alternative form of changing your health, right?
How can you say that your vitamin D levels can't change? I mean, I've seen my own personal vitamin D levels change.
I know, but they think they a lot, they're Ivy League educated with letters after their name, and I'm just a personal trainer, so I don't know shit. Yeah, I don't even go by any of that, but
I would actually like to make a distinction here because I think this is a really interesting phenomenon, and this does attribute to indoctrination and brainwashing. So you are a personal trainer and have a nutritional education. So most doctors, they're lucky if they get a week's worth of nutritional education. So to then come to you and say, but you're just a trainer, you are just a nutritionist, you can't talk about vitamin D levels or about lowering your triglycerides. All of these are diet related, they're nutrition related. So that would actually be your scope of expertise, and not
sure is. One would think. Sure is. That's when I just smile at them and I'm like, okay, well, we can squat, bench, deadlift, sprint, high jump, take off our shirts and pose in front of people, and then we can do blood work, and we'll have aesthetic, medical, and performance-based goals to base on who's healthier. You want to do that? And so far, no one's taken me up on that offer.
Yeah, I wonder why. And this is not to, disparage doctors. I think there's a great value. I mean, we talked about acute medicine. We need them. Yep. I don't want, no offense to either of you, I think you are wonderful, but I don't want you doing brain surgery on me. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. If
you
don't call us. Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know why one has to be discredited to, support another. That seems to be.
Right, so. Yeah, but I mean, I think it's also just the way the to become a formal doctor. It's so tunneled and everything. It's specialization, right? So the dentist thinks your teeth are the most important thing. The brain surgeon thinks that's the most important thing. Everyone thinks their own scope is the most important thing. When you do that, you just automatically, unconsciously ignore everything else, right?
But when you know the whole game, you know everything is connected. Everything that you breathe in, everything that you eat, every part that you can't isolate anything. This is one piece.
Well, that's what we do. We isolate things, and then we wonder why we can't get to the root of the problem. That's how, not all, but a lot of pharmaceutical drugs work. They just isolate the symptom.
And symptom only, not even
symptom only, right?
Which is actually one of the things we're seeing is the problem with these injections is they thought that it would be localized, which is also problematic, because if you thought it was only going to stay at the injection site in the arm, how is that going to inoculate you? But we, of course, found out that that's not true. It is systemic and it goes through your bloodstream, which is problematic. And, we do have some doctors who have, I point to Dr. Bridle, who said we made a huge mistake. And that's what should be happening, because when we were off camera, I was talking about how, what I see is a lot these people who are putting science as I call it, the scientists, Scientology, not the religion, but like the scientistology, people who are, believing in the religion. Yeah, the religion of science. And science is, it's a testing methodology. You have to have a hypothesis, which is a conjecture. It's not based out of nothing, but it's a theory. And then you test that theory. That's the method. And so this whole, it's proven, or no, it hasn't been proven. Well, that's the whole entire process.
That's not what science is. Anytime somebody says, trust the science says, or science proves, or the science is settled, walk away from that person immediately, because they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, who is the science? I'd like to meet them.
It's capital S with a $ science. Like, that's crazy. Science is a method of, you have a hypothesis and you test it with different variables, and then your peers test it over and over and over again. And it's a constant discussion of getting smarter and learning new things.
Yeah, science is based around the idea of curiosity, right? And if there's and dogma is the opposite, right? Dogma is not open to possibility, not open to curiosity, which is not open to anything other than your limited perspective, which you've attached yourself to. So that's what we're seeing with the same way people attach themselves to the idea of religion. It's happening to science, for the worse, right? People are not asking questions because the science said, right? But nobody knows who the science is. Researcher, I forget who it was, but it might have even been Brett Weinstein, but I think it was somebody else. But like in the field of research itself, like people are getting paid, researchers are getting paid to have their, fund their projects, and they're being forced to give results, otherwise they don't get funded. So there's already
it's funny to me when people say the science says, or trust the science, they're really just saying trust CNN, because you can go right on the CDC website and it shows 99.97% survival rate. They're not hiding this information.
No, they aren't.
It's the media that's lying.
Right.
And you can't blame the media, because the media is a business. So they're going to say the most fearful shit to get you to tune in. So it's up to human beings to discern. And we all have an iPhone. It takes like 2 minutes to Google this shit. So people saying that they're not going to look at the Fauci emails, or CNN said this, or I'm afraid of this, it takes 2 minutes to look it up. Like, the information is not hidden. After you read it yourself, you can make your own opinion. But there's nowhere that it shows that there's a pandemic whatsoever. The same amount of people died from 2015 to 2020, like worldwide on a yearly scale of deaths. There's no difference. So there is no pandemic. That doesn't mean COVID is fake or whatever, but we already know, because we just said only 5% of the people they marked down as deaths, and probably less, because just yesterday they knocked off another 25% from California.
Yep.
So
they've manipulated the statistics all over the place. Yeah.
And that's not hard to do, but that's not science whatsoever. So when people say trust the science, you're really just saying trust CNN or whatever, the mainstream media in general. I use CNN as a joke because that's what everybody watches here. And to me, they're the biggest liars, but it does, all media lies. I mean, they're business.
Yeah, they're not non-profits, right?
Yeah.
That's what the funniest thing. Like, the media has an agenda. They have, and that because they're a business, they make money off of viewership. Fear increases viewership, right? Controversy increases viewership, and all that stuff.
And once I understand that means I don't have to believe everything on the TV. I can look at it and research myself.
That's freeing. Yeah. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on, we were talking a little bit before about how, that the freedom to choose, to fight against these mandates, these passports. I think that is essential. I think the science behind what's going on is a separate issue, and I do think it is one that needs to be addressed, and whether or not they should even be administered is a very separate conversation. But whether or not they should be mandated, that is just antithetical to everything this country stands for. But what I think now is happening, and the Biden administration said this, that they were not going to mandate it. They said they were going to pressure the private sector, which of course means the big corporations, who are really not so private, in my opinion. I think the corporatocracy is a real thing to contend with and consider.
Sure.
So, what are your thoughts on that, and how this is going to play out, and what concerned citizens and people who want to take personal responsibility for their health can do?
Well, that's a great question, because my real opinion is 98 to 99% of politicians should all be in jail or worse, especially when certain emails comes out and certain truths come to light. Hopefully they do. And then so basically, I really agree with you where this whole thing is a biological weapon, and it's been a setup from the beginning. If anybody thinks I'm crazy, you can look up Event 201, and they planned all this shit out from the beginning. And last year, if you said that, you'd sound crazy. But like I said, this information is not hidden. And now the Fauci emails confirm all that. So to me, I'm with you. This shit is like really bad, worse than people think, as far as altering DNA and cutting out people's freedoms and leading to the great reset that they want, which is the New World Order, is one world government and a whole bunch of tyrannical, corrupt shit that is really horrible. I don't know how deep of rabbit holes you've gone into.
Oh, I have.
Okay, so you understand the evil of what they're doing to children and how they're enslaving the entire population with their lies and their control. So my opinion is, I don't know who needs to be held accountable. It's easy to throw out like Fauci and Gates, but it's always people behind the curtain that you don't know their name and higher ups. So the question really is, who are the white hats? Who are the good people on the inside that can do anything? Because I don't know them. We can do is take personal responsibility for our own health and happiness. And it's not really our job to wake up as many people, but I do know that if we all stood up together, every person, every country, every skin color, every ethnicity of any kind, if we all stood up together, we outnumber them and we have more power. And that's just basic math of if they're the 1% evil, corrupt people with all the money and power, and we're the 99% of good human beings working together, they try to divide and conquer on purpose. They separate gay and straight and black and white in these countries. They do that shit on purpose to lower our collective vibration and to separate us, because they're afraid of us really being in unity and coming together. It wouldn't even be grabbing muskets and rioting and going to the Capitol building. It would literally be just getting along and loving yourself and loving your neighbor. That would be good enough, is not hating other people. Because you see the new divide they're setting up is vaxxed versus unvaxxed.
I know.
Which, how is that any different than, because this is literally the same formula. The pattern recognition of the same exact formula that the Nazis ran.
Yes, I use that analogy all the time, yeah.
These people are diseased, they're lesser, they have to carry papers, this whole shit. Yep. I'm like, how is that any different? And now it's, you have to sit in this section of the concert, this section of the restaurant, vaccinated and unvaccinated. We've been through segregation in this country. It didn't work.
Right.
Like, it was a horrible idea. And now what's even worse is it's not by skin color, it's by content of character. So now they've broken every moral code there possibly is. And that really bothers me. But it's that simple. It's taking care of yourself, taking care of the people around you. And when we realize that we're stronger together and we have more things in common than we do separately, to me, when I see people, I don't even see differences, because we're so much alike that I love the little differences. When you have a difference in culture or cuisine or music or things, those are things to be celebrated, because we're 99.9% the same as humans. It's those little things that were different that are the cool shit, not shit that should divide us. That's crazy.
Absolutely. And those are the things that we can learn from each other. They enhance our life. They're the flavor in life. Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. And when you were talking about how they divide, there's actually an article in the New England Journal of Medicine where they were suggesting that children who have been vaccinated wear stars. They literally said that.
Hilarious. The powers that be have to be laughing at this point, right? Like they have to be laughing that they're getting away with this.
Right.
And what parent is okay with putting a star on their child?
I can't imagine. I can't fathom it.
I cannot, I don't know who or how or what is going to be held accountable for this, but every single parent and teacher, let alone the politicians and corporations that are already been horrible scum, but every parent and teacher that's okay with masking and isolating and segregating children, because we'll get to the hopefully this ends tomorrow and there's no more children getting injected and they can live happy, healthy lives and they'll be able to reproduce. Because I don't know if anybody's going to drop dead, but I do know your immune system is going to be lesser. So we'll see what happens next fall, winter. But I don't know if anybody's going to die. I really think the powers that be are playing the long game of just infertility. So that in 30 to 50 years, the population is funneled down and lower how they want. Like, I really think they want to inject the children so they can't reproduce, not so they die. You know what I mean? That's what I see. They're playing the long game.
Yeah. They always play the long game. They always
do. The same way they play the long game to feminize men and make everybody soft. Courtney, how come 98% of people that are speaking out are women, and there's no men and fathers standing up? There's a few holistic doctors that are men that are standing up, totally, and maybe a couple of fathers. But to me, just on TV in real life and on Instagram, it's women with no mask on saying this shit is fucked up. And I don't hear anything about men.
And I have to tell you that men who think this isn't affecting them are deluded, because the reality is women have a monthly report card. So we know we have something very concrete, very often to show, to point to. That does not mean that men are, immune and impervious. Men may be having, and we're already seeing some evidence to support that they're unfortunately experiencing some, not so pleasant symptoms and possible adverse effects as well.
Yep. Because you can't tell me it's a coincidence that Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, and the liberal states in America have the hardest lockdowns. It's not because that's where the most cases are. It's because that's where there's no strong men with guns. Because you ain't going to pull this shit in Texas and Florida. You're just not. Because then they will rise up. Whereas in Canada, everybody's so nice and so polite, and the government just cranks down on them harder and harder. And it breaks my heart. Because just looking at it objectively, you don't have to own a gun. We don't have to get into a Second Amendment argument or whatever on the show. But that cannot be a coincidence to me. That they made the men soft so that they made, to me, if you play the long game in reverse, like the pattern recognition, they spent decades and decades messing with the endocrine system of men to make them soft, let alone the programming on TV with the skinny jeans and the man buns and all this shit is okay to be feminine. And the worst part is they did it under the disguise of that this was good for women, which is absolutely crazy to me. Because to really respect women, you have to be a strong masculine man that knows that women and children are sacred and to be protected. So to me, the long game was they feminized, poisoned, weakened, and dumbed down and made lazy the men. Then they waited till everyone had internet and smartphones and they were nice and cozy at home. Because this lockdown shit wouldn't have worked 20 years ago because people weren't working on Zoom and they didn't have Amazon delivery. So it was the perfect storm of, okay, we can do this now.
Absolutely.
This shit was planned out so long ago.
So long ago.
And it's pretty obvious to me.
I agree. And I think, they also, the flip side of it is they've they've masculinized women. You see the whole, women need to be, hard and in the workforce. And I'm not saying that women shouldn't be able to work or have jobs or that they're not, capable, competent, and just as, competent in what they do. But this push for them to be so aggressive, that's not natural. There's a reason why, men are physically stronger. Men usually men fight historically. You know, they go to war. They had the swords and the, you know, now the guns, and there's a reason for this. There's a reason they were the hunters. This is biology. To deny biology is a crime.
Common sense to me. Just how it started was just over 100 years ago, women couldn't vote, and it was like socially acceptable to hit a woman, and they had to stay in the kitchen and second-class citizens and all that shit. And there's been thousands of years of that imbalanced, too much masculine energy pushing down the divine feminine, and that was very obvious. So there should have been a push for equality, where equal pay, equal voting rights, equal treatment as human beings, and then the yin and yang of masculine and feminine can balance each other out, where, like you said, women can lift weights, play sports, go to school, drive, vote, and make just as much money. But when you demonize being a mother and taking care of the children like that's a bad thing, that's crazy to me. Like, this has been set up for a long time.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on all that, Jonathan?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's the same thing with the birds don't exist thing. I think it's just like the result of unconsciously going to the opposite side for the sake of it.
Too far.
Pendulum. Yeah, it's the pendulum, right? So if I'm, again, in response to the feminine, we'll talk about the feminine energy, and again, you need that balance. Like whether you're a naturally effeminate man or a naturally masculine man or whatever your thing is, there's a spiritual, energetic balance, right? That needs to exist within every person for it to exist between other people, right? And like you said, there's been that gigantic imbalance for so long. So the natural unconscious instinct is well, let's go the exact opposite way. You see it in politics, right? We go liberal for a couple of years, and we go all the way to the right for a couple of years, and we go all the way to the left a couple of years. And we just keep passing through the middle where there's the most reasonable minded people, right? When we're projected the most extremes, right? So if you look on the news, they're going to project you the small percentage of extremism and project that to be on like 50% of the country, which is not the case at all, right? And so that warps people's perceptions to it rather than it doesn't exist. And so now that's a fast way to get people to change and manipulate them without them even knowing, because most of the country, and not to their fault, because there's just information overload, there's so much to think about and know, it's just all unconscious. It's all unconscious, that shift back and forth. And so when something's unconscious, anything that's not, you get tunnel visioned on that, just becomes enemy or becomes opposition, right? You become defensive, you become attached to your point of view, or the point of view that you're being projected on. That's the biggest thing, right? Because everyone's consuming something, whether they know it or not. We talk conscious consumption, right? So if you are consuming a single narrative over and over and over and over and over again, eventually that it stops becoming a narrative, just becomes you, right? And so now anything that's not me is death, essentially, right? That's how your ego mind works. If that something goes against the opposition of what I hold to be my truth, whether that's actually consciously my truth or not, now that's the opposition. And so now you get the divide and conquer thing. You get this division, and then you get the what's that great meme where it's like, the politician pointing to the two sides, like he's trying to take your money, but he has all the money, right?
That one explains everything. You know what he's talking about? It's a rich guy in a suit, and it's like a black construction worker and like a
blue collar
farmer or something like that. And the rich politician looking guy goes, he's trying to steal your money. What are you gonna do about it? And he just starts a fight like between the left and the right.
Yeah,
he's trying to take your cookie or whatever, and he has all the cookies.
And then the politician has all the cookies, and it's like, what are we doing here, guys? You're fighting. Like, whenever I see people arguing, I'm like, you're not the enemy. They're not the enemy. Like, we have a common enemy.
We do,
and it's people trying to take advantage of us.
And I like what you said earlier too. It's really only like you can only truly appreciate the differences in people once you realize how similar we are, right? But we're starting but people are going the opposite way. We're going like, how are we different, and trying to become the same that way, which is we're having issues doing that right now. We're seeing how that's not the answer, right? It's similarity to appreciate difference, right?
Yeah, man. Well said. And then Courtney, I've always said, like, even just to not even get that deep, just go surface level like politics, like progressive versus conservative, not even Democrat, Republican, because that's all corrupt and they're all paid off by the same people, but like people that are think they're more conservative versus people that think they're more progressive. I think, and I'm just making up this random number, at least 80% of people want the same thing. and it's the media doing the divide and conquer far left, far right shit. I really think it's like 80 or 90% of people can agree on like racism is bad. And like, you know what I mean?
Well, like the protests are a really good example of that. Because I remember when, whether you agree with the protests for, I'm sorry, not besides the point, this is about the media, right? Because I remember when the Black Lives Matter, when George Floyd, that whole thing happened, you looked at CNN, it was like they were getting in all the riots. If you look at it on Fox, there was like, they weren't showing any of the riots. But now you're seeing people protesting, you know, against the vaccine, and CNN's not showing any of that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, again, it's that, and that's manipulating people's perceptions. Because like I know people who are vehemently CNN watchers, and again, I'm just using CNN as an example,
Yeah.
or vehemently Fox watchers.
Yeah.
And those are corporations that have an agenda, and who knows who's beyond them that has even more
the
control.
people controlling both are the same.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I think,
And I think with
the same view.
We really saw that with 2020 with the election, and you know, with
so obvious.
you know, all of them shifted, and even
Courtney, just so you know, most those riots were mostly peaceful. I would like to say I saw that on TV.
well,
even
yeah,
though the
the burning of the fire, that's just, you know, that's just heat emanating. You know, it's
that's what
buildings
it was. Those
burning
were peaceful
down.
protests.
It's a peaceful heat and energy.
That's what it was.
Kind of
Global warming.
destruction.
I think we should raise the taxes for global warming, and that'll take care of the mostly peaceful fire riots.
Yes, that makes so much sense.
All right, I'm glad we agree on that.
Oh, you solved all the world's problems. Wow.
I know, that's what I do. It's just, we should all just work harder and give more money to the government, because they always are looking out for our best interests.
Right. So yes, always. So yeah, we can detest the sarcasm, but I wanted to address when you're talking about the left and the right wanting the same things. So I agree partially, and I don't fully agree. And
yeah, I would love to hear this, because like I said, my number that I was throwing out there, 350 million.
Yeah, and I don't know that. I'm not sure about the numbers.
America.
Right.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to
talk America. I think it's about 80% of people, if they didn't watch polarizing news channels, they would agree on most shit if we went issue by issue. But please, I would love to hear your opinion. So
here's my thoughts on it. So I like what you're saying about, you know, like as people generally, you know, have a lot in common. I mean, we're all animals, and we're all humans, and they're at the core, we also have a lot of differences. We're all so unique. We're all hopefully independent, unique, creative individuals. And that's the beauty of humanity, I believe. But and there's actually strategy in psychology, you know, they talk about when you're going to have a difficult conversation, difficult argument, the best way to approach it is to start by figuring out what you both agree on, you know, and you keep finding that alignment until you get to the point where you disagree. And this is one of the things when having difficult or political kind of controversial conversation, I am one of those people. I do not believe that as human beings, you cannot absolve yourself of bias. We can only see through our eyes and our perspective, our lens, and, you know, through our, you know, makeup and experiences. That's the perspective we have that shapes our worldview. We cannot escape it, you know. And I love to use the analogy of Switzerland. Even Switzerland was not neutral, so it doesn't really exist, you know. But I actually think in conversation, knowing where the person stands makes for a better good faith conversation, and you are actually going to have a more productive discussion, because now you're not constantly doing this dance of trying to figure out where the other person is, and, you know, like, you know, you're not doing this weird dance. You're being direct. And so I think it actually is a more honest conversation. So that being said, and we do have lots in common, so it's good to start from that place, because that's a good faith place. As far as, you know, the left and the right, I think that when you're talking about, you know, certain basic humanitarian kinds of universal truths, because I do believe there are universal truths, I don't believe human beings are always privy to, because again, we are biased, we are seeing through our little box, you know, so we don't always know what the absolute truth is, but there are some absolute universal truths, and some of them we know. 2 + 2 is 4. I don't care how often they want to tell you it's 5. It is 4. You know, so there are some basic facts that we know, and there are absolute truths that we don't always know. that being said, so when there are things that are universal truths, I think that there's a common core of humanity that wants more people. Most people, I believe more people are, want more good than harm. And they are looking for, things that will support that. However, when it comes to the left and the right, and this is an oversimplification, but there is the left always leads to totalitarianism, tyranny. It is all about, giving up power, individual power, acquiescence, authoritative control. And, you go further right on the spectrum, and this is not necessarily political because it varies when you're talking Republican and Democrat. That's just very different, conversation. But when you go further right, it is more individual freedoms, and it is less centralization is really what we're talking about in terms of government. And I don't know that everybody wants the same thing when it comes to that, because I think the left fundamentally believes that human beings are fixable and malleable, and it is the government's job to, shape them and mold them and fix them. Whereas I think the viewpoint, the worldview of the right is typically that human beings we have a fixed nature. We are flawed. We are fallible. And the job of government is to protect, the societies and the communities, and to have, a moral structure within a foundation that protects the citizens. But human beings aren't going to suddenly become perfect beings. That's it. Government is not going to fix you. That is the job of you to evolve and to work on yourself and your communities, your families, and those can help you. But, the government is not there to fix you. So yeah, I think that's a fundamental difference. But
yeah, I think that's where the left, again, a generalization of the left, the left is making a big mistake by trying to force people to change, when people will change quicker if you allow them to realize it within themselves, right? Because you're like, and that's just like a basic, if you can do it in an argument, right? If I like yell at you that you need to change, are you going to be more resistant to my opinion or more likely to hear me out? And that's the opposite. But what you're seeing is this attack on and this forcing of the right, whoever disagrees with the left, as being demonized and dehumanized. And it happens the other way too, right? But especially with, something that's emotional as like social topics too, which is a really easy thing to manipulate, an emotion, right?
And they've been doing it for so long.
And I have close friends, I was just talking to you, who are gay and who grew up in like really, really extremely anti-gay places, the very like red places, if you would put that in a political spectrum. And so just based on their experience, they're just naturally, again, maybe unconsciously pulled away from that. But I've also had the opposite, where I've had a really extreme, like liberal person, a conservative person in a room together, the two of my friends, without any messaging or any other information. Yeah. And they both agreed that we just really want to just be allowed to be who we are. Yeah. Right. And I mean, I think like you're starting to see more of those stories come out. Whereas if you allow people the opportunity to just experience who you are and let them be who they are, right. If they change, they change. And if they don't, they don't. Right. And it's personal responsibility again. Right. I can just be whoever I want to be. But as soon as you start telling people they have to do something, you automatically create resistance.
Yes.
What you said was so perfect.
Okay. I'll say one more thing I want to hear here. I don't think that all people, though, want to have that personal responsibility. I think there are people. So this is why I say this. I don't think it is the majority of the people. Okay.
But I think that's because they've been brainwashed and indoctrinated by the system that wants them to rely on them. Because where the left is completely fucked and completely wrong is where you said, where they think the government is in charge of people. Yeah. And that we need to give more money to the government, because that's where they are completely brain dead. But they're indoctrinated to think that everyone on the right or everyone that's conservative is racist and hates gay people.
Right.
And that's what they're told. And when you wake up and realize most conservatives are not that, then that's what I meant by we're more in the middle than I thought. But if you're progressive and you think that the government is in charge of anything, and that's where my libertarian is coming out of all these boxes, and I hate both sides, and I hate the fact that there is only two sides. But yeah, that's where the left is completely batshit crazy, because they won't do the pattern recognition that we just talked about, that the government's been screwing us over for forever.
Right.
And what you said too, the more you lean into trust a select few people in a position of power to run, that's a dangerous game that has yet to really work. And
but if they start crying that, hey, gay people deserve rights and deserve to get married and racism is bad, I'll be like, no shit, I agree. And so would like 98% of conservatives. So if they only knew that, I think they would.
But the difference is that conservatives don't think that it's the government's job to fix that.
Exactly what I was just going to say. So it's them that they have to wake up to government corruption.
Right. Yes.
To realize what the hell's going on. So, and that's what I was saying before about the government picks on liberal states and liberal countries because they're the most gullible. And that's what breaks my heart. As somebody that sees above the matrix and sees the political games, they're picking on people that think they're smarter and better than everybody and think that they can trust the government. Those are the people that get taken advantage of the most. And you can see it now even more. It's more blatant now. Yeah. And they just make no sense. The left with their contradictions and hypocrisies blow my mind so much. Like, we hate billionaires, yet we support billionaires. And it's like, we hate old, rich white guys and we hate cops, but we just elected an old, rich, corrupt, racist white guy and a corrupt cop. Yeah. That's who because the TV said the orange man was bad, but we didn't think. So that automatically makes you stupid. I'm waiting for because not that we need to talk about the election, but it's like, I don't know if anybody voted for Biden. A lot of people voted against Trump because the TV demonized him. Right. But I don't think anybody was like, yes, Biden has a great plan and he's been fucking up for 49 years. And he's not even running anything. But that's my point, is they just voted against somebody that the TV said was bad versus voting for somebody. Because that's them not thinking. If they would have said both of these choices suck, let's get an independent, or let's do better in 2024, let's do something together. I know, I'm getting silly. But they're not making any sense when Biden has been proven to be corrupt and racist. And I can show you a 15-minute video of them saying horrifically racist shit. And yet they're like, but the TV said Trump was racist, so we're going to vote for Biden anymore. So that's where the left is just brain dead completely. But I was talking more about like social stuff, like you were saying, where it's like, I mean, can we name anything other than racism and gay rights that the left is correct about?
No, because this all stems from critical theory, right?
Right.
And
that's the problem.
Critical race theory is really just an extension. It's another iteration of critical theory.
Exactly.
And they tie the whole intersectionality, all the postmodern destructionism, it's all, they've made it inextricable so that you just to create this paradigm of the oppressor, the oppressor.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then they feed in and pay and worship their oppressor. It seems like the people on the left are worshiping celebrities.
Like an abusive relationship.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, that's literally, if you've been a Democrat your whole life, you've seen Biden be in an abusive relationship for 50 years, and you still give him one more chance. He's not going to beat me today. That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy.
It is, when you were talking about the, the paradigm of, the Republicans and Democrats. I mean, the establishments on both sides, I think, have disappointed a lot of people on both sides. Yeah. Because
if you believed in Republicans, you need to stop believing in them after January 6th, because it was so obvious that there was fuckery and corruption, and not one of them stood up for it. So it's like, oh, Shawn's been right the whole time. It's been corporations funding the left and the right, and it's one puppet master and two puppets, and they're playing against you. And that's a more divide and conquer stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I did a tweet like a while ago. It was about how the powers that be align ideologically with the left, but they actually push their agenda through the establishment Republicans who are parroting the words that patriots want to hear, but they're doing what the powers that be have, instructed and pulled the strings for them to do. Yeah. And that's, I think that's the real problem. And it's I'm not sure. Do you guys have any suggestions on how? I really love what you were saying, Shawn, about, the people rising up, because I think, the people together, and it's not about people, the 99%, whatever the percent may be. It's not about them being a collective unit. I think it's about for me personally, it's about them being independent, critical thinkers, but questioning together, standing against the authority together, civil disobedience, which is, one of the beauties of this country is that we still have that and people are not exercising it.
That's crazy to me. The only solution I can see would be putting LSD in the water and making all the politicians, yeah, make all the politicians and all the big corporations do multiple
psychedelic. You want to turn MK Ultra on them?
Yes. Everything that they use, all their black magic, I want to use it against them.
Yeah.
To free them, to help them.
To free them, and then they will realize they can't sleep at night knowing the horrific things that they're doing to the population. And then we'll realize we don't need any wars and we don't need any political leaders. And we can just live in the Garden of Eden on heaven on earth with no borders and no wars and no bullshit.
So I mean, like we were talking about the long game of politicians, and I really think that the ultimate long game to combat whatever's happening is going to be inspiring conscious awakening within individual people. I really think it's going to be a grassroots thing. It's going to take a long time. We all want it now, which is like just how we're programmed. But I really and then we're seeing that with like people in this community, this conscious community that's waking up. That word's all blasphemized now.
No, I like that. I love what you're saying.
But yeah, like, and the more people become that within themselves, and I just talked to like 500 people who had spiritual awakening experiences in the last couple of years. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yes.
And we always say on this podcast, in the Catholic, love always wins. And that may be an optimistic opinion. I think it is a little bit of some naivete in there, but I believe, and I believe in the long term that if we all individually wake up, everybody dies, including the people and the powers that be. Maybe they'll find out some way to live forever. I don't know if that's going to happen in droids, right? But but the more people, the more children, the more of us just start to see that within ourselves. It won't be as hard. There'll be less resistance because there'll be more curiosity and there'll be more openness on a natural level. And it seems like, well, that's going to take a fucking long time, but shit takes a long time.
Yeah.
So
that was absolutely beautiful, because if there was a way to measure, and there's not, if there was a way to measure who was awake and aware of whatever the corruption and the lies and matrix that they've created, that number has grown quite a bit. Whatever the number is, it's not able to be measured. But that number has grown so much in the past year, and that's a good thing. And that's the spark of the long game of, we keep talking about Great Reset versus Great Awakening. I think we're winning that battle.
And it's like, I don't know if you're an Avengers fan, but we're big Avengers fans. Have you seen the Marvel superhero movie? Avengers fans?
Oh yeah, awesome.
Okay, yeah. Well, like in Infinity War, Doctor Strange gives away the Time Stone, he just gives the bad guy like all the power to kill half the universe. But 5 years later, he knew what was going to happen. So it's not going to be 5 years, but like I really believe down the line, however many times any of us reincarnate, I think that's where we're going to, and we're going to have to keep going to the sine cosine curve of up and down before we get to that middle way that the spiritual teachers of old and current have talked about, and that's evolution of humanity and consciousness, I believe. But we have to get through the polarity, the pendulum swinging before it settles into that still spot, really. So.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know that I'm quite with you on no, I'm not an anarchist. I'm not for absolutely no government. I think that we do need a complete restructuring, though. I think there needs to be
complete.
Yeah, in terms of that, I really think
the corruption has really, I think one of the things that I was saying was that there's always been corruption. There is evil in humanity. Humans are not all good. Corruption, can breed more corruption, and we've seen it throughout history. But I think the difference is that it's no longer becoming the little parasite or the little germ. It's becoming the mechanism. It's metastasizing.
Yeah.
And we need to do an overhaul where the corruption, and I think this is why what's so unique about this country is that our founding documents have a moral underpinning woven into the structure of our government, and we lost so much of that. So whether or not each individual subscribes to those religious beliefs or not, we have the freedom to choose your religious, spiritual, personal beliefs, but within the the universal laws that we are, subscribing to are those moral underpinnings. And that is something super unique, I think, to this country. And it is part of what made it was part of what made that political structure work. And so much of it is eroded. And I think that,
absolutely, yeah. And I like what you said too. Like, it's not that we all need to agree on the same thing, but we all need to unite for our own freedoms. And that's why we both lean libertarian, because one gigantic government to run 50 states just doesn't even make sense on any level whatsoever, and it's not working. I'm much more for smaller government, because for one, you actually have an impact on who, like, if you pay attention, which most people don't pay attention to their local government, small government, you actually have a way more control over your personal experience, what affects you.
yeah.
So if you're relying on somebody in DC who doesn't even give a fuck about who you are and is pandering to votes to stay in power, who's being helped besides the guy in power, right? So I think I'm all for small government, but not so, there's a select few people who would not be opposed to that for good reason. But and in that way, like, if you want to live in a state where, you know, this is legal and that's not legal, just move to that state, you know, like, and then you can be with people that agree with you, but we can all respect our own differences within each states, you know, like, I think that'd be cool. It only takes 150 people to start like your own small community where you make your own rules in the old country, I think, right? 150 people. I think
I like that.
Yeah.
To start. Yeah. It's 150 people to start a legitimate town.
A legitimate town.
Where you get to make your own laws and have like city council. Legal.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so we could do a homestead.
So where are we doing it?
Whatever you want legal. Because think about what he was saying, but now we have the internet. Imagine living in a town, but it was only the people you followed on Instagram.
And you knew there were other.
You were like, you saw the pros and cons of that real quick.
I know, she was like,
Yeah.
Oh, so great and so horrible. At the same time.
You saw that.
For a weekend.
That'd be fun for like a small.
A vacation
really
party,
fun.
but not live there. But yeah, that's what it is. You can create a homestead of, I forget how many acres it is, but it's 150
This isn't the same as like a sanctuary city. This is a homestead is different. I'm not familiar with this. Okay, interesting. Very interesting.
The only problem is that all the land in the world is already bought up by rich people. So that's the
By what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
By a bunch of rich corrupt people. That's like all the land in the world is owned by that. So you'd have to go to like some weird part of like Southeast Asia to find anything.
I know some people.
You know some land.
We might have to talk. Yeah.
Oh, we will. Oh, we will. Because here's the thing: I'm rooting for love and light, but there's always fuck around and find out stockpiled just in case things go south. Because like I said, there's no time limit on when things are going to be, but we can all agree things are not going back to normal. But hopefully there's enough people on the inside and there's enough people waking up where this will kind of dissolve and they'll try their new tricks. The powers that be, will try their new tricks to divide and conquer and create fear and chaos. But as long as we can get through the no mandatory vax and no passport, that's the first victory that I think we need to work for. And then they're already talking about, and I'm sure you've heard, food shortages and just tanking the economy, which is kind of pretty obvious when you look at inflation and the bubbles and all this shit that they're creating. Like, when you affect people's money, that's just going to cause fear and chaos. And that's really obvious that they're setting that up as their plan B. So, you know, our plan A is love and light and wake up as many people as possible. And our plan B is move to Costa Rica and farm coconuts with machine guns.
They're also planning, you know, the cyber polygon and Project Bluebeam. Yeah.
Project Bluebeam, to me, though, you're only going to fool stupid people. People keep saying that that's the next one. And it does look pretty realistic, but I think that's put out in the mainstream so much. Or maybe once again,
it's a red herring kind of deal.
Yeah, me too. That's what I think. It's a red herring. But that may be me that's watched hours and hours of alien documentaries where I know too much about you know what I mean? Like, if aliens wanted to come with a spaceship and shoot us, they would have done that already. But that's not what they're doing. Yeah, like we are ants to them. That's not even, they could take us out like that. But they don't, because that's not how the game works. So anybody that's going to fall for a CGI projection of and plus that also doesn't make sense to me, because wouldn't that unite people, like the movie Independence Day and shit?
Well, I think that their plan, they want to unite the world, that's their reason they need one world government, because extraterrestrial is going to take over Earth So the whole
If you
world
don't unite and give up all our freedoms.
Of course,
because
shit.
Yeah,
and
okay,
under
okay.
the one world government that's going to protect us from these extraterrestrials
Well,
or
what
evil
about the aliens
take
on
us
the
over.
inside?
So that's the thing. It's because there are good, whatever the word is, good, righteous alien species as well. So who knows if they would intervene at that point. But the
intergalactic war.
Yeah, because there's plenty of that going on. But yeah, to me, but I guess you're right. Is I'm only thinking, like you said, through my lens and my perspective, because I would not fall for a Project Bluebeam. But then again, I didn't fall for COVID, and so many other people did. So.
Right. I'm not. I'm. If I'm talking about obviously not falling for it, that wasn't my point. But I think they're going to use it to try and scare the masses.
Yeah. I think they're going to go economic collapse first because they're
already going to, and I do think the cyber polygon is a very real concern.
Yeah.
But all of it could be a red herring. It could be like, I don't know if you guys remember Y2K.
Yeah. What was that about?
Internet's gonna crash.
Yeah, but that was more, I think that was like a troll job though, right? That didn't do any divide and conquer. That kind of was more just a distraction.
But that's what I'm saying. Cyber Polygon could be another one of those. It could just be another, everybody's going to be all freaked out that the internet's going to crash and then we're going to have a hijacking, and who knows? I don't know. I mean, what I do know is that they telegraph a lot of what they're going to do.
Of course, they explicitly say it.
Yeah, right. It's not. So they telegraph through a lot of means. I mean, Hollywood, the media, they telegraph, but they do sometimes explicitly say, with COVID, we saw SPARS pandemic. You talked about Event 201. We saw Crimson and Contagion. Well, they had many.
Talked about it.
Yeah.
Fauci said there's going to be a surprise pandemic, and I'm like, that's like telling someone there's going to be a surprise party, bro. The surprise is up at that point. Like, if you know about it, how is it a surprise?
Well, now you're expecting it at a certain time.
But it's also like, wait, if it's a surprise, how do you know?
Right? That's what, bro. And then
that's the surprise.
That's the surprise. I paid for this, and I'm getting paid from
it. Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah. So I think in that sense, there are people who do need to, be woken up to what is happening and to start looking for some of these things to at least protect themselves. Because I think the economic collapse can't be completely successful if people are more self-sufficient, right? If people are less dependent upon the big corporations that are tied to the government. If people are, doing, and I'm not, I do as I say, not as I speak, because I live in a city and I live in an apartment and, I don't have a farm. I'm not completely self-sustainable. But I think that more people are taking this approach. And I think more people who do, I personally don't think, I'm curious your thoughts on this. I see a lot of people talking about going completely off the grid. And I don't know that is a great solution. I think those people will actually be taken out. But what are your thoughts? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, those are the people that are going to be in trouble, is the people that have no self-sufficiency as far as cities and stuff like that, like you said. Yeah. And that's interesting that you said that, that the people that are stockpiling and farming and going to be off the grid would be taken out. You mean by the military?
Well, no, I mean, I think people who are farming and who are, in their self-sufficient, they're going to be great. A lot of them are actually building communities, and I think that's great. But there are people who are going completely off the grid. And I don't know that, because there's so much, they won't be aware of what is necessarily happening. And
I agree with that, because again, that's another extreme reaction. And then you also limit your ability.
I think there needs to be balance, right? We need more balance. I feel like we're in the destabilization stage. They want to bring us into the new normal, and the way they do that is to throw us into such chaos that you can have a breeding ground for usurpation. So I think people need to find that balance so they're not so easily shuffled one way or the other. And I think this goes back to kind of what we were talking about in the beginning, is just people taking some personal responsibility. I think there's, on a bigger scale, there are solutions we can look into, maybe some of these homestead ideas. All politics are local. People need to get more involved locally. I think that's a huge thing people can do. But, something simple that people can do is like, start taking care of some of their personal their personal lives, their personal health, their personal wellness, their families, to homeschool their kids, take them out of indoctrination camps.
I love that, because that's basically what the whole show is about, is personal responsibility for all the layers of health, your mental and your emotional health and your spiritual connection, not just your physical health. So we see so many people that don't even take care of their physical health. But echoing what you said, that's what our podcast stands for, and that's what we stand for as men and individuals, is personal responsibility and helping yourself so you can help others.
And someone listening to this for the first time, and like, this is a lot to take in, like all the big stuff going on. So it's like, well, what the fuck do I do? And like, that's why start with yourself, start with the simplest things. And that's how it snowballs, and you snowball your ability to impact others, the more you're able to be self-sustainable, self-reliant, independent, and curious about your experience, right? And ask questions, right? Like nobody asks any. That's one thing I noticed too. And ask more questions, not to try to disprove something or attack something. Just get curious, because the more curious you are, the more answers you'll get, and the more answers that don't add up, the more you'll be able to figure out, right? So it's like the awareness is curiosity. Curiosity is awareness. Like that's why I believe in.
That's perfect.
More than that, and that's like not what we're teaching kids either in school. Like in college, high school, it's like you need to learn this. 90% of it is not going to help you in the real world, and there you go, on your way. So like I'm all for changing the education system too. Is a really big thing that I want to at some point have an impact on, because I did really bad in the traditional sense in terms of college, not so much high school, like in terms of test taking and scantrons, but I'm like, as a self-discernment, like I'm much more self-aware than most people I went to college with, in terms of ability to critically think, and all that was through working on myself, dealing with my own bullshit, and then now trying to help other people. Whereas people are still lost because they're still tied to this idea of what education is supposed to be. And the smartest people of all time, most of them are all autodidacts, or like self-taught people, and there's a reason for that.
Pattern recognition.
Yeah.
There you go.
Einstein wasn't very good at school. Einstein wasn't very good at school. Steve Jobs said "fuck school." Like, these people invented things and thought of things that changed the world.
Yeah. Well, they're nonlinear thinkers. Our school system is designed for linear thinkers who follow that pattern. And 1 out of every 10 people are nonlinear abstract thinkers. Or associative thinkers. And those people tend to be more creative. They typically more likely to be entrepreneurs, self-starters. They don't necessarily fall into the traditional paradigm, but they see things that other people wouldn't necessarily see. So, but this is again, we were talking about the differences in people. This is the beauty of humanity, right? Everybody has been given gifts, and I think it's incumbent upon us as individuals to hone those gifts and to be able to share those gifts, because we can all benefit if everybody worked on their strengths and their unique gifts and contributed. We would have this, a true melting pot, not like a beautiful thing. So
right. I love that. You want another conspiracy theory? Because you just sparked.
Sure, I'm up. Why not?
The people that have not thought that anything is fishy at all, and that have bought the mainstream narrative hook, line, and sinker, and the ones that don't critically think or ask any questions, and that blindly took the jab, they're the same type of people and the same type of thinkers that their jobs would be replaced by AI robots in the not too distant future anyway. But the free thinking, compassionate, empathetic, creative, loving, team working human beings are always going to be necessary, because human beings are some of the most, like I said, creative and inventive creatures in the universe. And so the ones that are, like, no offense to whatever, cashiers and this and that, it's not that you're a bad person, it's that they have technology that's going to take your job. Truck drivers, like all these things, right? And those jobs are going to be gone soon. So the left's idea is everybody stay home and we'll pay you money and inject this shit so you can't have kids anymore. And in 30 to 50 years, the population will be lower. But that 1 out of 10 people, that is us and our friends and the like-minded people, they're always going to be the inventors, the creators, the team players, making art, making technology. And apparently the only ones that are going to be able to make humans anymore.
I like this theory. I hope it's true. I do want to say 2 things about it. I know people who have taken this and who are wonderful people and who
of course
are actually independent thinkers who felt this is why the mandate needs to be stopped, because they feared for their jobs, they feared for their livelihood, they feared that they couldn't see, and they may have been indoctrinated, they may have been pressured, which I'm strongly against. But I don't want to say that they're all, just automatons, because I know some of these people, and I actually am not, I'm more spiritual than anything, but I really do pray for them, and I hope that they're going to be okay. I love them and I care about them, and I hope they are going to be okay. The science does not bode well of what we've seen so far. So, I don't want to sugarcoat anything. It does not look like it's going to be too great in the future. But hopefully,
but I love what you said.
But hopefully the more people who do ask questions, the closer we are to finding an antidote to whatever these negative adverse effects may be. But if we don't ask questions and we keep shoving everything under the rug, we keep increasing the censorship, then we can't find solutions. Because you know what, let's just take a benevolent approach. Like if we were to just, completely put aside any types of conspiracy theory, any types of, negative or evil malintent, human beings are fallible and they make mistakes. What if this was all just a giant innocent mistake?
Right.
You still need to investigate and ask questions. That's what happens with science. There was a time where we thought the earth was flat. We thought that, there are a lot of things we made mistakes about, and we were willing to ask questions and say, wait, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't add up. Let's do some investigation. Let's do a study. Let's research this. And the more we do that, the more solutions we come up with. That's so that is my hope. I agree. I think that is the hope for the future, is more people asking more questions.
That's beautiful. And I would love to piggyback on what you said, is more love and compassion for people that have chosen to do this, because they're not the enemy. Like so many people have just been divided and pushed away from friends and family members and loved ones because of decisions that we've made, that because of the fear and pressure from the TV. That's absolutely crazy. If we have science to show that their immune system and their fertility is lower, we need to have more love and compassion for them.
Right.
Not less and not divide and fall for their tactics. That doesn't make you awake and aware if you're judging and blaming somebody else for shit.
No.
Now you're in the cycle too. Right?
You're in the same cycle of judgment, division, and fear, more importantly.
Right.
It's on a vibrational level, fear of the people that are injected and fear of the virus and fear from the TV is the same thing energetically. From a vibrational frequency standpoint, like scientifically measured, not some hippie woo shit. The vibrational frequency of fear, no matter what it's for,
whatever is causing it,
whatever is causing it is the same. So that's where love always wins. And like I said, no matter what their next divide and conquer, fear and chaos tactic is, I'm not going to be phased. I'm still going to do my thing.
And I think, there's a difference between the love always wins from like denial, woo-woo kind of just like ignorance is bliss perspective. Yes. You can be cautious, you can be inquisitive, you can hold the line, and you can do that from a loving, compassionate place. And I don't think that it needs to come from this, denialistic kind of ignorant persptive. You can have both. It doesn't have to be binary.
Yes, acceptance is the key to to doing that, right? Like accepting that all possibilities, including the most negative, are real, makes you more loving and kind, not suppressing those, right? Like that's what people get upset with the spiritual community, some of the people in the spiritual community, for suppressing some of the negative stuff, but it's the negative stuff that frees you. The people who really understand the energetic stuff, it's like, oh, well, that's the key to understanding the positive. So.
Well, you guys know this as trainers. We can put this really tangible. You can't hate your body into fitness, right? You have to accept where you're at. You have to be honest with yourself about where you are, what your real goals are. And you have to fully accept, embrace, and love yourself enough to put in the work. Like self-love isn't like, oh, I'm going to just sit in a spa. Sometimes that's great. We all need those days. But sometimes self-love is tough love. It's, I actually need to get my butt out of bed and, put in some work and, then see real results. So yeah, that's a very like tangible way, which again is why I love, I do love the fitness world, because it shows you things that in other realms, like such as the spiritual, such as the emotional, and intellectual, that we can't, we don't have tangibles to prove necessarily, but when it comes to, physical movement, it's right there. You can't argue with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if somebody, if someone told you on the TV that you need to shake weight to lose weight, and you're shaking and you're still doing it, and you're not asking why this is not working, well, that's not their problem. That's a you problem, like that's you not asking enough questions of why the shake weight's not working. So it's like, fitness is a great medium to see all this stuff play out, which is why, we're bridging the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And once you're aware of it, it becomes really apparent,
Well, this has been amazing. Do you guys have anything else you want to add or say, and definitely tell us where to find you? You'll send me all the links and
Sure. Yeah. The biggest thing for everybody, and we've said it 10 times already, is personal responsibility for your health and happiness, and don't fall into the divide and conquer games.
Yeah.
Don't hate somebody just by the way that they look. And we've kind of got past that. So now they're trying to hate people by the choices that they've made in the content of their character. And that doesn't help either. And just remember that everything in the universe is energy, and everything is an energetic game. And that's why the powers that be, cause chaos and fear, because that's when you're not making good decisions, is when you're in fear. So take a deep breath, pause, and don't react emotionally to things, and control what you can control. Don't worry about and don't put any energy into what you can't control. Think for yourself and question everything, and love yourself. That's it.
I love that. Well said. You want to add anything, John?
Yeah. Think for yourself. Curiosity. Ask questions about your experience. Study yourself. Study what's happening. Detach from it so you can observe it with the most objective awareness you can. Not entirely. Love will win the end. Wake up.
We'll send you all the links. The Bridge podcast is on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, all the good things. Coach Shawn Nixon on Instagram. We'll put links and whatever. And then we would love to have you on our show, because everything you just said in the past 5 minutes is exactly everything that we talk about as far as like fitness metaphors that we take deeper into other stuff. But it's exactly what you said. Once you know the physical and you can have tangible analogies and metaphors and examples from that, then that's how you learn deeper things. Yeah, I'm at Jonathan A. Mathew, my personal account. Conscious Content is my publication. I'd actually love for you to submit something to her. I'll talk with you about that if I could feature you on. That'd be really cool. So she told her story on your the whole origin in more detail. The origin story, superhero origin story. She is a superhero. She is a superhero, and that's a hell of an origin story.
Thank you. And I love that. Ask questions. I have a shirt for Truth Matters, and we're going to have the merchandise when we're right now we're at truthmatters.biz, but we're going to transition over to truthmatters.media. And when we do that, we'll launch the shop. And I have a shirt and it says, ban critical theory, restore critical thinking.
When are they available? I'm wearing that the first day. I want to be the first
person.
Yeah, send us
I think we're looking at like end of July, like somewhere in July is where we're at. Yeah.
I'm going to be logged on like a concert tickets and hitting refresh to be the first one to buy it.
I love it.
Thank you so much for having us. That was awesome.
Thank you guys so much. Yes, and we'll definitely. I look forward to coming on yours. We'll talk about all the metaphors.
Yeah.